Rocky transition areas, they are a key spot for finding not just smallmouth, but largemouth too. Let's talk about it on the Googan Lab. So no matter if you're walking down the bank, doing some bank fishing, or if you're in a boat and you're running down a bank, you're gonna notice that there's transition areas, and bass are creatures of transition. They love to hang on edges and just areas of difference. And one of the key things that they'll hold on when you're going down the bank is a transition between sand to rock, or small pebbles to chunk rock. Those changes in the bottom composition, and especially rock. Bass just love rock. Smallmouth cannot stand to get away from that stuff. They love being around those areas. So we're going to talk about how to approach fishing those type areas, because they're sometimes inconspicuous. So one of the first things you want to do is look on the bank, because you're going to see the contrast up on the bank, on the shoreline, and then follow that out, and you can oftentimes see where it's going to make a little rock pile, or follow that transition right into the water, and then see if you can see it in the water as well. Sometimes you can't, it's not clear enough. But first thing is, look ahead of you on the bank and look for those transition areas. So one of the first things I like to throw is some sort of search bait, and that's usually a moving type bait. I like to go with a crankbait, especially because this is going to dig into the rocks and really help you feel. If you're feeling sand, and then all of a sudden you start to fill that rock with the bill, that's when you know that you're in that transition area. And a crankbait is just a really good way to make contact, so that you know you're in the transition area, but also when that bill starts hitting those rocks, that hard bottom, that sound will trigger fish to come over there and eat that bait. So a crankbait is a really good choice, and I love to throw these in the summer and the fall, when fish are really feeding on shad. The second option, this works just about everywhere you go, but a spinnerbait and a vibrating jig. These two baits right here are really good. You don't have to fish these right on the bottom really slow, but you can fish those over the top kind of quick and see if those fish are suspended, maybe feeding on shad closer to the surface. And they're just a really good option anywhere you're going bank fishing to throw these, but especially if you got a lot of shad running around, these two are great options. I'm gonna throw the vibrating jig, this clickbait, in more dirtier, stained water. I usually throw a spinnerbait in windier, clear water conditions, but you can play around with both of these. Those are great options for fishing those transition areas. And how you want to fish them is throw past the transition and reel through it. So you don't want to land your lure right on it. You want to throw past it and then reel it over the top of it, or reel your crankbait down into it. So if you're not getting bit on any of the moving baits, then it's time to slow down and fish something on the bottom. And that usually for me means going to some sort of jig, like a finesse jig, or a football headed jig if it's out a little bit deeper. If we're talking, 3 to 8 foot, I'm gonna go with a finesse jig, like this 5/16 ounce little juicy. Put your favorite little plastic on the back and just crawl that. And the same concept applies with the crankbait. When that lead head starts hitting on those rocks, makes that sound. It's a lot slower, more natural presentation. The fish are triggered by that. Another great way that you can follow that up, especially for largemouth, is with a shaky head. I love to throw, this is a slim shake right here. I'll throw that on like a 1/4 ounce shaky head and just drag that along the bottom. And when you're feeling sand, just kind of sweep that rod tip until you get into the rock. And when you start feeling that hard bottom, that's when it's time to slow down, add those little shakes, the little twitches in your rod tip, because that's where those fish are gonna be hanging, right on that edge. So another thing you can do, switch it up on the shaky head, a lot of different options. Throw a different style worm, throw a creature bait like a French hog. You can even throw a bug style bait. just depending on the water clarity and what kind of species you're tackling. But that right there, slowing down with those plastic baits and the jigs, is really gonna get you a lot of bites. So make sure to stay on the lookout next time you're going down the bank to look for those transitions ahead and fish those key features of transition going out into water. If you want to see more tips and tricks, stay tuned right here to the Googan Lab.